Good morning, my dear ones. This is Sheila Pearl, all about loving yourself. I don't know anyone who doesn't want to fall in love. It's a wonderful feeling to fall in love, to be in love. And of course, when I say that, you and I might be thinking of falling in love and being in love with that other special person. But this week, just like last week, perhaps in all subsequent weeks, I'm talking about falling in love and being in love with the most important person in your life, and that is you. You may have wanted to deny it or to distract it or to argue with me about that, but as we continue on this journey, I'm hoping that you see more and more clearly every day that the most important relationship that you have ever is with yourself. And that when you come to grips with whatever it is in yourself that you're still not at peace with, then everything outside of you flows more easily. Doesn't mean everything's easy breezy, but the way you handle it will be different. Because you won't tend to have knee-jerk reactions to other people, because you won't tend to take them personally, and you won't tend to be judging them. You'll be more in a compassionate place, because that's where you will have come to with yourself. So one of the quotes that I started with this morning is Mark Nepo, who's talking about how important it is to be present. It's a beautiful idea. He says, wakefulness is not a destination, but a song the human heart keeps singing, the way birds keep singing at the first sight of light. Think of yourself as that bird that's singing its beautiful song at the first sight of light. And what are we talking about with light? We're talking about the light that comes to you and me when we realize that we're okay just the way we are. That doesn't mean we're not going to grow and change. That doesn't mean there aren't things about ourselves that we want to expand on or improve on or change our focus about. But let's agree that we're all each our own universes, that within each of us is everything, the dark and the light, the in and the out, all shades of gray, and everything in between. That we all have the capacity to be mean. Doesn't mean we all act on it the same way, but we all have that capacity. We all have the capacity to be compassionate and to be empathetic. It doesn't mean we all have developed the ability to be that, but we have that within us. So if there's something about yourself today that you feel ashamed of or you're judging, I'm saying to you, this week's lesson is all about get off it. Get off of this bandwagon of judging yourself or trying to get rid of the negative things in yourself, because it won't work. It won't work to say to yourself, I'm a lazy son of a gun and I'm going to get rid of my laziness. You think that's really going to help? It makes it worse, because what you focus on will expand. And if I'm focusing on getting rid of anything, I'm still focusing on it, and that will expand. So what's the opposite of laziness? If I'm judging myself for being laziness, shame on me for judging myself. But if I have compassion for myself and I'm noticing maybe other people are calling me lazy, and maybe I'm agreeing with some of those other people, what could I call being lazy? I could call it a form of procrastination. I could call it a form of resistance. I could call it some kind of lethargy, which is either physical or emotional or spiritual. Laziness is a judgment. So I am calling us all out this week on judgment. Let's not choose judgment. Good morning, Shirley. Let's not choose judgment. Let's choose curiosity. Let's choose to be curious about what is it that accounts for my feeling or seeming to be lazy? What is it that's stopping me from getting off my doofus and getting something done that I've said I wanted to get done? And what is it that stops me from stepping into my courage? Or what is it that stops me from eating the things that I know will make me feel better, give me better energy? And what is it that stops me from saying no to drinking certain things or eating certain things that make me feel like crap, quite frankly? But it's not a judgment. If I can observe myself, if you can observe yourself from the place of the compassionate onlooker, the person who understands that you want to be the best you can be. Good morning, Kathy. And that you want to find a way to get out of your own way. Judging yourself isn't going to help you get out of your own way. I'm just saying, that's just in terms of physics, it doesn't work. So let's agree that everything in us is perfectly imperfect, and that we have an obligation to stay awake and to be aware of ourselves all the time. And it's other people in our lives who often help us stay awake. It's these people who can be the goad, the trigger, the mirror, the reflection, the feedback that we either like or don't like, that causes us to be more clear about what's happening with us, to kind of test out what we're thinking and feeling about anything in particular. So I'm asking us to just be in love with it all, to see it all as perfect, that the one person who may drive us crazy may be our greatest gift. Thank you for being such a pain in the you-know-what. Because that person who's poking me and driving me crazy is inviting me to love something in myself that I'm resisting. Does that make sense? For instance, if I am in some kind of relationship with someone, maybe it's not someone I like, maybe it's someone I have to work with, maybe it's someone in my family who's constantly pushing my buttons, and I'm judging them. I'm judging them to be judgmental or narrow-minded or a pain in the butt or just, critical or anything that you might, hi, Admita. The moment I'm judging someone else, I'm also judging myself. And when you're pointing that finger of blame at anyone, notice the three fingers that are pointing back at you. So every time we're judging someone else, we're also pointing something at ourselves we don't even realize. So in last week's worksheet, I invited you to look more deeply at the questions about the people that you're attracted to, recognizing that we're attracted to people because there's something in them that we need to be reminded of. There's something in them that we need to work something through that we could only work through with them because they provide for us the playground, if you will, or the battlefield. So this week's worksheet is inviting you to look even deeper. And I'm starting kind of with this first question again, but with a slightly different slant. That part of me that I see in my most important relationship is. Now remember, last week's worksheet began with my most important relationships are with, and I qualified that to say your most important relationship may not be your most enjoyable relationship. It may not even be your closest relationship, but it may be your most important because it does challenge you. So the part of me that I see in my most important relationship, that's important to pay attention to. And the person you choose as your most important relationship is important for this exercise. So let's say that your most important relationship is with your mother. It's not the most comfortable, and it may be the most contentious, but maybe your mother is judgmental. Maybe your mother is demanding. Maybe your mother is narrow-minded. Whatever that is. Now, that part of me that I see in my most important relationship would be, if that is kind of the idea of my most important relationship, the one that challenges me, the part that I see of myself in a relationship with someone that I judge to be judgmental, or I judge to be narrow-minded, or I judge to be demanding, or whatever is on the list. That part is that part of me I need to pay attention to. I'm not at peace with that part of me. I'm hiding it, I'm pretending it's not there, and I'm focusing on the other person and what I'm judging in them and that negative thing in them, and I'm pretending that it's not in me, or I'm not accepting that it's in me. So it's important to understand that I am attracted to, or I recognize that my relationships are important in this and this person because there's something in that person that I need to be reminded of myself. The second question is about the person you most admire. Now, the one person I most admire is, so I want you to take a moment right now. You can even close your eyes if you want, but just for a moment, think of a person. You may not even know the person. It might be someone who's a teacher, someone whose books you've read, someone that you've seen on a TED Talk, someone that is famous and you don't have a particular relationship with, but you admire them. I want you just to think for a moment. Who is one of these people you most admire? And now think about what it is you most admire about them. Just take a moment. The one person I most admire is, and what I most admire about them is. Do you have someone in mind? I'll give you an example of one person I most admire. It's one of my teachers and my mentors. Some of you may know who this is without my even mentioning it. It's Neale Walsch. What I most admire about Neale Walsch is that life brought him to his knees in his early 50s. And as a result of being stripped of family, of support, of money, of job, of status, everything, and sleeping in a tent in a homeless camp with other homeless people, he cried out to God, "What is this about? Help me. Help me understand what is next for me. What do you want from me?" And Neale Walsch found within himself the capacity to rise above his shitty circumstances, which he had created. He had co-created it by his own admission. He had been a philanderer, according to his own admission. He had been a jerk. He had been self-absorbed. He had been selfish. He had been all kinds of things that he himself acknowledged. And we could call those negative things. And we could say that we could judge someone like Neale for being all of that. But Neale began to understand that if he could focus on what he wanted to be, rather than continue to beat himself up for what he was judging himself for having been, that maybe he could make a difference in the world. with his own light. And he has. He's written over 35 books, which are translated into heaven knows how many different languages, at least 27 languages that I know of all over the world. He's a messenger of light to the world. I admire that courage. I admire that capacity to pull oneself up from being at the bottom of the map of consciousness scale, by the way, the map that I gave you a couple of weeks ago. He was mired in shame and misery and guilt and, all those dark, heavy energies. And he didn't know how he was going to pull himself up. And he got to know a bunch of homeless people who helped him up. And he started to have conversations with himself. And then he started to have conversations with God. And God basically said to him, everything about you I've created to be good. So stop beating up on yourself. Start focusing on the things that you'd rather be, rather than beating up on yourself for what you're not, or what you think you're not. So, what was your answer? Who do you most admire, and what do you admire about them? Now, here's the interesting twist. What's the value of my noticing who I admire and what I admire about them? What's the point? It's to recognize that I see or saw and continue to see a part of myself in Neale Donald Walsch. And over the past 5 decades of my life, I have been brought to my knees by life in many different ways. By the loss of a child in my early 20s, by the loss of my singing career in 30s, by cancer in my 40s, by the loss of my husband in my 60s, and all kinds of things in between. It's a long list. But the point is that I saw a part of myself in Neale when I met him in my 60s. And I recognized a part of myself, which is why I was attracted to, why I admired Neale Donald Walsch, because it was a reminder to me that if he can bring himself up, so can I. That's how it goes. I wouldn't have been attracted to, nor would I have admired anyone else or found something valuable in someone else if I didn't have that in myself as well. So think about the people you admire and what it is you admire about them. And take heart, my friends, because that attraction, that admiration, that acknowledgement of something in them that you admire is information to you about what is within you. You may not even see yet. And so, I think that's a helpful exercise for you. That's just question number 2 on your worksheet. Number 3, the part of my own behavior which is most challenging to me is what I see in. Now name someone that you know who might be a representation or a reflection of something of yourself that you are challenged with, that you recognize in someone else. So one of my own behaviors, a part of my behavior, which is most challenging to me, is my financial cluelessness over the past 7 decades. Well, let's just say 5. And so I see that in other people that I know. I won't name them, but I do recognize that in other people who might be even more challenged than I with their finances. When I can accept my challenges with compassion and non-judgment, when I have a relationship with someone else who's wrestling with the same thing and I acknowledge that, I'm not going to tend to be judgmental towards them because I would be judgmental towards myself. And so you can begin to see that sometimes we have people in our lives who are reflections of things in ourselves that are a challenge. And it's an opportunity to meet that with love and with compassion, not with judgment. So let's say I know someone who is grappling with the issues of having enough money. Maybe someone who's down and out right now, is in between jobs, and is feeling awful that they don't have enough money to pay the bills, and maybe they're on unemployment, maybe they're on food stamps and things like that. I know what it's like to not have enough money in my pocket or in the bank or at my disposal to pay the bills. Good morning, Beth. I know what it's like to be struggling. And I know what it's like to wake up in the morning and say to myself, what's the matter with you, Sheila Pearl? You're such a loser. Why don't you have more going for you now? I know what it's like to beat up on myself. But I've been working on this to the point where I'm saying, no, wait a minute. Beating up on myself is not going to help anything. That's going to make the situation worse. I'm just going to notice that I need to spend more time with people who know how to take care of things financially so I can learn more. And I can focus on things that I need to do that will make my situation better. And I can be compassionate toward myself and therefore others as I'm struggling to find my way, as they are too. You see, my job and your job is to be in love with everything about myself. Your job is to be in love, in a state of love, in a mindset of love about everything that's in you, so that you're coming at your own growth from a place of compassion and acceptance that we're all in this cosmic stew together. We're all here to learn and grow. No one came into life having it all figured out. No, none of us, right? Not even Mother Teresa. So, number 4, what I want most to accept about myself. For me today, that's easy because I've been working on this, okay? For you, this may not be that easy. What I want most to accept about myself is that I'm perfectly imperfect. What I want most to accept about myself is that everything about me is beautiful. And I want to focus on certain things that I want to expand on. And I want other things to be in the foreground, to not be, up as prominent as perhaps it had been. What I want to most accept about myself is that nothing about me is bad or negative. And that may be a very strange concept for all of us. But nothing about me is bad or negative. For instance, my relationship with fear. Long ago, I had ongoing conversations with fear. And I would say to fear, recognizing that fear meant well. I'd take fear by the hand and say, thanks for sharing. I know you mean well. I know that you mean to protect me. But I'm a grown-up now. Usually the voice of fear is more the little child in me. And I can say, here, take my hand. I understand where that fear is coming from. And I've got this. Let's walk down this path together. We've been here again. We've been here before. And let's walk this path together. Maybe a bit scary because maybe we haven't been this way before. But let's take each other's hands and let's go down that pathway together. Judgment pushes away love, my friends. Judgment pushes away love. It's important to be discerning. It's important to make choices about where you want to put your focus. But there's no place for judgment in the world of love. And we're talking about loving yourself. So there's no place for judgment. There's no place for beating up on yourself when we're talking about loving yourself. This language that we've developed, like, what's wrong with me? I'm such a loser. Why can't I get this right? Or I'm not good enough or whatever. That's all a big lie. And if we weren't on Facebook, I could use another word. But those of you who know me well know that I'm not shy about using words that are expressive. And it starts with F. It's a big lie. And it so gets in the way of each one of us being our magnificent, glorious selves. So what I want most to accept about myself is everything. What stands in the way, number 5, what stands in the way of my accepting everything about myself just as I am is a lot of nonsense that I've been taught. And that is, I'm supposed to be this and I'm not supposed to be that. What stands in the way is judgment. What stands in the way is limiting beliefs that say, I'm not supposed to accept all my negativity and bad stuff. But I don't have negativity and bad stuff. Those are labels that aren't true. The main obstacle to my loving myself exactly as I am today is, well, I'm not going to tell you what I think it might be, but I've already told you what I think it might be. So you fill in the gap. My greatest weakness is. The weakness is not a judgment, it's an observation. We all have weaknesses and strengths. We all have dark and light. We all have up and down. None of that is a judgment. Those are observations. That's just what is. So why don't you name what you think your greatest weakness is so that you're aware? And then focus on how you envision your strengths. What stops me from loving my weakness is, that's number 8. What stops me from loving my weakness? Well, I've already given you the answer, so you fill it in as it occurs to you. Number 9, life has given me gifts through my challenges. My goodness, my friends, if we didn't have challenges, we wouldn't get anything done. We wouldn't grow. We wouldn't be creative. I had a major loss when I was 23. The only child I've ever given birth to suddenly died when she was 8 months old. I can't begin to tell you the empty space that created in my heart. That was a pain that doesn't go away. It left an empty space that's still there. And what was my response to that? How have I attempted to fill that empty space? By finding ways to be a mother to others in non-traditional ways. whether it's being a teacher, guide, coach, friend. And it gives me great satisfaction in my life to know that I have actually, over the past 5 decades, become mother to hundreds in many ways. People who let me into their lives for me to teach and to coach and to empower, all those things mothers do. And so I overcame that challenge in my way, finding my courage, finding my creativity, using my imagination, using my talents, digging deep and asking myself, who am I here to be? Who am I here to serve? So life has given you gifts through your challenges in what ways? Number 10, if I stopped beating up on myself for my faults, I might be able to. I know a lot of people who are beating up on themselves for their faults. I rarely do it. Every now and then I fall down, I confess, but I rarely do it anymore. But for the people I know who are beating up on themselves for their faults, I can only begin to imagine what they might be able to do if they stop beating up on themselves and start simply focusing on what they want to see more of in themselves rather than less of. They might actually complete a project. They might actually get a job. They might actually lose some weight and take charge of their health in another way. They might actually be willing to go out and have social connections with others. So when we stop beating up on ourselves, we're not in that dark space, that heavy energy of shame. And we can lift ourselves up and rejoice that we're here, and we can meet other people and learn from other people and laugh with other people and eat with other people and go to the movies with other people. I'm not going to go through all of the questions, but I really urge you to take advantage of the worksheet. For instance, number 13, the ways I experience feeling loved by others. Pay attention to how you experience feeling loved. And notice who the others are and what it is they bring to the table for you. So I wanted to keep this at about 30 minutes, and we're kind of there. So I want to wish you a week filled with love. Yes, this is the week in which Valentine's Day appears, and I know this is Love Month, and maybe this is Love Week. I'd like every day to be Love Month and Love Week and Love Day. So right now, I'm really urging you to choose to love everything about you. Life is always inviting you and me to love ourselves more, not to judge ourselves more. So I'm inviting you to love yourself more every moment. Make it a loving week. Bye for now.